We have multiple Toronto Maple Leafs updates to go over today that have huge implications going forward as the Four Nations Cup approaches. And as the trade deadline inches closer and closer, a bunch of new reports are dropping. We're going to break down that and discuss how these updates impact what Brad Treliving's plans will be going forward. Stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we get to it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. We had a video earlier today surrounding trade talks, Ethan Cowan, Fraser Minton, but we also have a bunch of injury updates to go over ahead of their next game here, and they're coming off of a huge win against the Oilers on Saturday. It was a great win. Anthony Stolarz is nearing a return, but there are some injury updates that have come out that are now very intriguing and could actually impact what Brad Treliving does towards the deadline. But let's dive right into it here. You can see we'll start with Cal Järnkrok. So this implies a fairly imminent return for Cal Järnkrok, which will eventually require cap juggling. Many seem down on him, but I think he's easily the Toronto's 6th or 7th most valuable forward once he shakes the rust off. Mid-6 production plus defensive value is more than we can say for most of the forward depth. Covered that a little bit briefly earlier on today, but basically, you can see this down here. This is coming from the fact that Tavares, Knies, and Quillen all in gray jerseys, plus Järnkrok is wearing blue. We're on the ice ahead of the practice. Obviously, since then, we've seen some guys, including Quillen and Nikita Grabenkin, sent down. But I want to hear your thoughts on this more in depth here regarding Cal Järnkrok. We also have another injury update to go over, but Järnkrok is going to be very interesting to see how he actually factors in not only to this lineup, but to Brad Treliving's trade plans going forward as well.
Yeah, it's very interesting heading into the playoffs because does Järnkrok get into a game before the playoffs? I'm not so sure right now, but he is skating and he looks good, right? Like by all accounts, he's skating regularly now, back on the ice ahead of schedule from everything we heard earlier this season as well, because again, he went to go see the specialist. It wasn't good news. I'm pretty sure he had a surgery as well mixed in there, but he's already back on the ice. So good news for Cal Järnkrok in terms of, returning to the NHL, but how does he fit in with the Leafs right now? And I mean, if he doesn't play until the playoffs, I think that's good news for the Leafs. They won't have to do anything in terms of cap juggling, but if he is to return sooner, this could throw a monkey wrench into Brad Treliving's plans or whatever their plans are right now, because you're going to have to eat that salary, right, when he comes back. And where does he fit into the lineup? You can figure it out in the playoffs, right? The salary cap goes away. It doesn't really matter. But if he returns before then, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, especially with Jani Hakanpää, who we're going to get to. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to return to the lineup too? It's not looking very likely at this point, but Järnkrok is one that does look very likely. And on top of it, I mean, he's going to have to get his footing under him. He's going to have to get into games. Like, I don't know if I put Järnkrok after an entire season off into game 1 of the playoffs or game 2 of the playoffs, right? Like, that's a tall ask for that player. So I feel like he's probably going to have to get into games here. And what does that do for the salary cap for the Leafs? This could throw a huge monkey wrench into Brad Treliving's plans, and also whatever happens with Jani Hakanpää as well.
Yeah, and obviously the trade deadline is inching closer. The playoffs are inching closer, and we've seen Järnkrok be good in the past. We've seen him have some struggles as well, but if they have a lot of faith in him for whatever reason, what they're seeing, we don't get, we're not privy to seeing what's behind the scenes regarding, Cal Järnkrok. But if he's playing really well in practice, doing everything well, maybe it shifts their deadline plans a little bit when it comes to getting depth forwards, which again, we know is something that is always on any team's radar. And surrounding Jani Hakanpää, so they added him to the LTIR, gaining some money to his cap. This is way back in December 31st. Now, when this happened, everybody was talking about maybe he's out for the season, all these different things, and the rumblings lately were about how he's not going to play for the Leafs anytime soon, but he's going to play for the Four Nations faceoff. But now he's been ruled out of the Four Nations faceoff because of his ongoing injury issues. Finland now needs to replace 2 defensemen, with Miro Heiskanen already out as well. So with Heiskanen out, with Jani Hakanpää out, Finland's in for a rough go. But for the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is, I guess, a good sign. It's a bad sign in the sense of that he's out because of an injury, but I guess some fans are upset with the fact that he was playing in the Four Nations Cup, but not playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we know from Elliot Friedman and multiple different reporters that the Leafs are targeting a defenseman at this deadline, which tells me that they have absolutely no confidence and no faith in Jani Hakanpää's ability to A, return healthy, or B, have a severe impact or any positive impact on this team going forward.
Yeah, and Finland already named their replacements today, so Jani Hakanpää is not playing. That has been confirmed. He is not going. And I mean, for me to feel even a little bit comfortable about him going to the Four Nations faceoff, he would have had to play every single Leafs game this week, all 3 of them, and he's not ready. We know that he's not ready. He didn't even make the trip to Edmonton. He was still skating in Toronto by himself, which we'll get to in a second as well. So I don't feel comfortable as a fan watching this team, him going to the Four Nations faceoff, and that's basically the first hockey that he's played all season, because again, he had another procedure on his knee. I know he's played 2 or 3 games for the Leafs this season, but again, a long layoff after that again. again. He's had another procedure, and then the first games that he's going to play is not for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but for Team Finland in a new tournament. I feel like that would have been absolutely ridiculous. So he's not going. I think that's the correct choice for all parties involved. I mean, the Leafs would have looked so bad here if he went off to play in the Four Nations face-off after playing 2 games all season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then maybe never playing for the Leafs again, right? That's still up in the air. He's missing the Four Nations face-off now. So when is Yanni Hakanpää going to be ready, right? His salary is still on LTIR. We've seen that, right? As of, I think it was December 31st or something like that. So it's been there for a while, but again, this continues to get more and more interesting. They signed this guy mostly for the playoffs. So is he another guy that we're only going to see in the playoffs? It is possible, but I would like him to get into some games here so he can get up to speed. He's missing the Four Nations face-off. I think that's the correct course of action because, again, I would have been really frustrated if he ended up playing in that and barely playing for the Leafs this season. That would have been absolutely ridiculous. But let us know in the comments what you think about that. But, he's not going to be playing at the Four Nations face-off. But when does he return to the Leafs? That is the real question right now.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's good in the sense of he has more time to recover. It's bad in the sense of it's been a colossal failure of a signing. You see this here from guy on Twitter. So, yeah, he's cooked. What a colossal failure of a signing. The Leafs signed OEL Hakanpää. It could have had Zadorov or Roy. It's looked like a major, major miscalculation. I think we should settle down a little bit. Like, I don't think it's a huge, groundbreaking, colossal. I mean, we obviously Leafs fans, everyone tends to overreact, especially when there's things like this, myself included. But I mean, they signed OEL. He's been okay. He obviously is hurt. We're going to keep you up to date with that as it comes out. Probably some more updates on that tomorrow. Yanni Hakanpää, it's only $1.5 million. The initial contract was 2 years at $3 million. This one, they toned it down after the physical. There could still be a world where he plays a playoff game. I'm not going to rule that out yet. There's still a world depending on the physicality and things like that. But you see here, I think with Hakanpää likely done for the year, which might be an overreaction, but we'll see how it is. I'm officially moving to the Leafs' bigger need now as a top 4D. A 3C is nice, but someone who can take on tough minutes alongside Riley would greatly influence his team's bottom line more than any 3C could. Interesting. I think they definitely do need one. I still think that a third line center, or maybe according to the reports, if you saw our video earlier, maybe a top 6 center, which would move someone down, John Tavares probably. They definitely need a third line center to be a little bit more than they need defense. That being said, Riley's been really rough this year. They need to get him a partner to help absorb some of those minutes. And at the end of the day, it's going to be very interesting to see, especially with how this team is looking right now. I think they need both. I think they need both. I don't think there's one priority over the other. I would say the priority is probably for them a third line center, but they also need a defenseman as well. But I feel like internally they're probably fine with Philip Myers and Connor Timmins kind of alternating for the rest of the season.
Internally, they might be okay with that. I do think that, the priority for me at least is a forward because I think that the Leafs team defense is actually really good and a lot of teams don't have that. And I feel like this year it's actually really, really good and a strong suit of theirs. The goaltending's helping with that, of course, as well. But I think that's something that, they have done a great job and put attention to detail in this year. And I mean, the defense probably does need help. They need both, right? But I'm saying in terms of priorities, probably a forward at this point in time. But they're probably going to need a defenseman as well. Yanni Hakanpää, again, like you mentioned, there is a world where he plays in the playoffs. Absolutely. But I would like him to get up to speed. When is he going to get into a game again? And who do they target if they don't sign him? And yes, I do think that tweet was a overreaction. Definitely. He might actually play again this year. And then it's not a colossal failure, right? Like this is a guy you only signed for 1.4 or 1.5 million dollars and he's hurt again. Although back-to-back off seasons where Brad Treliving signed a right shot defenseman that didn't work out in that way due to injury problems. So that's something to keep an eye on.
One more expensive than the other, at least.
One definitely more expensive than the other, that's for sure. But definitely something to keep an eye on, like moving into the future. OEL is also hurt. He was a good signing in my estimation. He's looked great this year, I think, in certain areas of the ice. But again, it's a tough signing. Yes, he's on the IR, but I don't think it's a huge disaster class or anything like that. I think they can use that salary elsewhere, and at least it's not that much on the LTIR, of course. But you would like to see him play. You would like to sign defensemen that are actually going to get into games. And Zadorov, by the way, has been terrible with the Bruins. And the Bruins have been terrible, so I'm not sure I would want Zadorov anyway. And the Leafs obviously made out great with Chris Tanev.
Yeah, Roy would have been interesting as well. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. A ton of new updates coming. The Leafs now have a couple more games until their big Four Nations / All-Star break. So we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.